All right, so I'm gonna start doing this series where I start reading. So first, we got this book, 365 Prayers for Me. I've been reading this almost every single day type. I'm not gonna lie, I love this book. So today's prayer says, "The Lord delights you. He will take you. He will take great delight in you. In His love, He will no longer rebuke you, but rejoice over you in singing. God, I know how loved I am. Often I struggle to love myself, see my own value, or feel that I am good enough for all expectations that you put on me. I know all these are baseless concerns from my own sinful nature, though, because that is not my own how you view me. Today I will find my strength in your delight. Anytime I am loving to myself, I remind myself of how loved I am by you. I will find delight in the fact that I delight to you. With your love, O Lord, nothing can bring me down today. In Jesus' name, amen." So that's what's pretty much saying, just like, don't let the Lord love you and love yourself pretty much. Because self love is the best type of love. And once you have self love, everything else just comes. You feel me? But I'm about to put this timer on, and we about to read for like 20 minutes. Mastery by Robert Greene. I'm not gonna lie, I rock with this book heavy. Hold on, let me close my door real quick. I rock with this book heavy. We about to read for 20 minutes. Put this timer on. No phone for 20 minutes. And then just read. Let's get to it. D&D. Let's get to it. All right. Craft the appropriate persona. From early on in life, Teresita Fernandez had the feeling that she was watching the world around her from a distance, like a voyeur. As a young girl growing up in Miami, Florida, she would observe the adults around her, eavesdropping on their conversations, trying to decode the secrets of their strange world. As she got older, she applied her observational skills to her classmates. In high school, people were expected to fit into one various cliques. She could see clearly the rules and conventions that went into being a part of these groups and kind of behaviors that were considered correct. She felt alienated from all these different cliques, and so she remained on the outside. She had a similar experience in relation to Miami itself. Although she had an affinity with the Cuban culture, she was a part of her own background as a first generation Cuban American. She could not identify with the happy beach life that prevailed there. There was something more somber and edgier to her spirit. All of this alienated her, accentuated accentuated all of this accent, accentuated her sense of being an outsider, a floater that did not fit in anywhere. There were other floaters in school, but they tended to drip into theater or art or the art scene, places where it was considered to be unconventional. Teresita had always liked making things with her hands, and so she began to take art classes. But the art she produced did not seem to connect with the grittier style of her character. It came too easy. Her work was a glib and superficial. Something was lacking. In 1986, still uncertain of her direction in life, she entered Florida International University in Miami. Forever her, forever, I mean, Following her high school inclinations, she took a sculpture class, but working in clay. But with its softness and ease of manipulation, gave her the same feeling she had in high school of making things that were merely artificial and pretty. Then one day, spending time in the sculpture building, she noticed some artists working in the metal crafting large scale pieces. These sheets of steel had a versatile effect upon her, unlike any other artwork she had seen. She had felt in some way that this was the material that had been meant for her for all along. It was grain heavy and resistant, requiring a great effort to shape it. The properties of steel corresponded to the sense of resiliency and power that she had always felt inside herself, despite her petite size that she had always experienced, want to express. Damn. Okay, we're doing good so far. And so she began to apply herself versatily to a newfound medium. To work in metal required firing up the foundry and using a Santiago torches to tropical heat of Miami. The tropical heat of Miami could not could ma- could make such labor intensely uncomfortable during daytime hours. so she began to work on her sculptures exclusively at night. This led to an unusual schedule, starting at 9, working until 2 or 3 in the morning, then sleeping through a good part of the day. Besides the cooler air, working at night had other advantages. With few people around, the studio was quite peaceful and conducive to serious work. She could focus deeply. She could experiment with her pieces, make mistakes that no one could see, and could be fearless and take chances. Slowly, Fernandez began to command of the take command of the medium, and in making her sculpture, she need some water. Hold on. Ah, okay. Slowly, Fernandez began to take command of the medium in making her sculptures. She felt like she was forging and transforming herself. She was interested in creating pieces that were large and impressive, but to make work, she had to devise her own method. She would design the pieces on paper, but would work on them in smaller sections that would man on herself. Then, in the quiet of her studio, she would assemble the sculptures. Soon, her pieces began to be displayed within the department and on campus. Almost everyone was quite impressed by her work. Standing in bright Miami sunshine, her enormous steel sculptures sense of conveyed that sense of power she always felt within her. But there was another response of her pieces that surprised her. Because few people had seen her at work, it appeared that these sculptures flowed out of her effortlessly, as if she was some had some unusual gift. This drew attention to her personality. Sculptures was a largely male domain that tended to attract most of the macho male artists. As she was one of the few female working in heavy metal, people naturally rejected her onto all kinds of preconceptions and fantasy. The discrepancy between her and slight feminine appearance and her large scale posing works was quite glaring. The people would wonder how she managed to make such work and who she really was, intrigued by her character and by also the way her beautifully crafted sculptures seemed to appear out of nowhere. They saw her they saw her as a lurging, mysterious, a mix of hard and soft qualities, an anomaly, a magician with magic, a magician with metal. Ah. With all this scrutiny, Fernandez suddenly became aware that she was no longer a voyeur, watching others from a distance, but was a center of attention. The art world felt right to her. For the first time in her life, she had been a sensation of fitting in. She wanted to hold on to the interest that others had in her work. Now that she was thrust into a more public position, it would be natural for her to want to talk about herself and her experience. But she initiated that it would be a mistake to deflate the powerful effect of her work on others by suddenly revealing to everyone how many hours she applied herself onto these sculptures and how they were really the product of intense labor and discipline. Sometimes she reasoned, what do you not reveal to people in all is more eloquent and powerful. She decided to go along with the image that others had of her and her work. She would create an air of mystery around her, making sure not to talk about her process, keeping the details of her life hidden, allowing people to project onto her own fantasies. Mm. As she progressed in her career, however, sometimes something about the persona she had created in her university years no longer felt appropriate. She noted an element in her public personality that could play against her. If she were not careful, people would judge her based on her physical appearance as a as a young, attractive woman. They would not see her as a serious artist. Her elusiveness might seem like a cover for a lack of intelligence, as she were merely feeling her way through things, not on a par with a heavy hitting intellectuals in the field. It was a prejudiced woman feat artist. It was damn. It was a prejudiced female artist had to deal with. Any hint of being wishy-washy or inarticulate when it came to talking about her work carried the danger of feeding the preconception that she was frivolous, merely dabbling in the arts. And so she slowly developed a new style that suited her well. She would be assertive and speak with authority about the content of her work, while still developing her work process in mystery. She was not weak or vulnerable, but in the clear command of subject. In males artists, if a male artist needs to see serious articulate as a woman, she would have to appear even more so. Her assertiveness tone was always dignified and respectful, but she made it clear she was no lightweight. Over the years, as Tercereta Fernandez became a world-renowned conceptual artist, working in all types of materials, she continued to play with her appearance and make it feel for changing circumstances. The stereotype for artists is that they are disorganized and only interested in happening in the world. She would have played against the expectations. She would transform herself into an eloquent lecturer, exposing her work and exciting ideas at the public at large. Audiences would ponder and be intrigued by the discrepancy between her pleasant composed surface and the complex challenging content of her discourse. She became versed in many fields outside art, combining these artists' interest in work, and in the process exposed herself to a wide range of people outside the world. She taught herself to mingle through equally well with the workers mind the graphite for her pieces. As she as with as with gallery dealers, a kind of posture and flexibility that made her life as an artist much easier and made it possible for her to be a typecast. In essence, her public persona became another form of art, a material she could cast, transform, according to her needs and desires. Hmm. Okay. Okay. Got 9 minutes left. All right, bet. It is not generally acknowledged or discussed, but the personality we project to the world plays a substantial role in our success and our ascension to mystery. Look at the case of Teresa Fernandez. If she had merely kept to herself and focused exclusively on her work, she would found herself defined by others in a way that would have hindered her progress. If after her initial success she had boasted about all the hours of practice that went into training herself in metalwork, people would have seen her as a mere laborer and craftsman. They would have inevitably pegged her as a female artist who was using metal as a gift to promote herself and get attention. They would have found weakness in her character to exploit. The public arena in art of or any endeavor can be ruthless in that way, able to look at herself and at the art world with a level of detachment. Fernandez initiated the power she could possess by being conscious of her persona and taking control of the appearance dynamic. Understand, people will tend to judge you based on your outward appearance. If you are not careful, people and simply assume that it is best to be yourself, they will begin to ascribe to you all kinds of qualities that have little to do with who you are, but correspond to what they see, what they want to see. All this can confuse you and make you feel insecure, consume your attention. Internalizing your judgments will find it hard to focus on your work. Your protections is it to turn your only protection is to turn this dynamic around by constantly molding these appearances, creating the image that suits you, controlling people's judgment. At the time you will find it appropriate to stand back and create some mystery around you, heightening your presence. At other times, you will want to be more direct and impose a more specific appearance. In general, you will never settle on an image or give people the power to completely figure you out. You are always one step ahead of the public. You must be creation of the persona as a key element in social intelligence, not something else you are demanding. We all wear masks in social arena, playing different roles to suit different environments we pass through. You are simply becoming more conscious of the process. Think of it as theater. By creating a persona, this is mystery. This is mysterious, intriguing, and masterful. You are playing to the public, giving them something compelling and pleasurable to witness. You are allowing them to project their fantasies onto you, directing your attention to others' theoretical qualities. In your private life, you can let the mask fall. In this diverse, multicultural world, it is best you learn how to mingle and blend in all types of environments, giving self-maximum flexibility. You must take pleasure in creating these personas. It will make you a better performer on the public stage. I like that one. I'm not gonna lie. Next one. See yourself as others. It's like little chapters type y'all can see. Like, all right, we got 5 minutes left in this bit. See yourself as others. Growing up with autism, Temple Grandin had much to overcome in life. By the end of high school, she had managed to transform herself through keen desire and discipline into a gifted student with a promising future in science. She understood that her greatest weakness was in social arena. With people, with animals, she had all almost telepathic powers to read their moods and desires. But with humans, it was opposite. People were tricky for her. They often seemed to communicate with one another through subtle, nonverbal cues. For instance, falling into the pattern of laughter in a group, according to some interpersonal rhymes, she could not fathom. She felt it was. She felt as if she were an alien watching these strange creatures interact. It seemed to her that she was nothing she could do to awkwardness of people. By her awkwardness of people, what she could do control, however, was her own work. She decided to make herself so efficient in whatever job she had that her social handicap would not matter. But after graduating college with a degree in animal behavior and entered the work world as a consultant in the design of feedlots and cattle handling facilities, she realized through a series of mistakes on her part that this was a completely unrealistic. On one occasion, Grandin had been hired by the manager of a plant to improve its overall design. She did an excellent job, but soon she began to notice that the machinery was constantly breaking down as if it were the fault of her design. She knew that the malfunction could not could not be any faults of her own. But with further investigation, she discovered that the machinery had problems only when a certain man was working on the room. The only possible conclusion was that he was sabotaging the equipment to make her look bad. But this made no sense to her. Why would he deliberately work against the interests of the company that employed him? This was not a design problem she could solve intellectually. She had to give up and leave the job. On another occasion, a plant a plant engineer had hired her to fix a particular problem. After a few weeks on the job, she noticed that there were other parts of the factory that were poorly designed and clearly dangerous. She wrote to the president of the company that to point this out. Her tone of letter was bit they bit brusque. She was annoyed that people could be so blind in design issues. A few days later, she was fired. Although no explanation was given, it was clear that her letter to the president must have been the cause. As she mulled over these incidents and other similar ones that she had merit had marred her career, she felt that the source of the problem had to be herself. She had known for years that she often did things that rubbed people the wrong way, and that they avoided her for that reason. In the past, she had tried to go about her life ignoring that painful reality, and now that social deficiency were threatening her ability to make a living. Ever since she was a child, Brandon had a peculiar ability to see herself from the outside, as if she were making another person. It was more of a sensation that would come and go. As an adult, she would realize that she could use this gift at a particular effect by looking at her past as if it was another person in action. For instance, in the case of a man who sabotaged the machinery, she could clearly recall how she had barely interacted with him and the others engineers. She had made a point of doing everything herself. She could see in her mind the meetings in which she had presented her design with ideas of rigorous logic and not up to them before discussion. In the in the case of the letter to the president, she could recall how she was bluntly criticized people in front of their peers, and she had no attempt to interact with the man who had hired her. Visualizing these moments with clarity, she could finally understand these problems. She was making her coworkers feel insecure, useless, and inferior. She had injured their male egos and had a paid the price. Mm. Her realization was what had gone wrong and did not stem from empathy as it might have for other people. It was intellectual exercise. It was an intellectual exercise like solving a puzzle or a design problem. But because her emotions were not deeply involved, it was easier to go through the process and make necessary corrections and corrections. In the future, she would discuss her ideas with engineers, involve them as much as possible in the work, and never directly criticize the people for anything. She would practice this in every subsequent job until it became her second nature. Slowly developing social intelligence in her own way, Temple ironed Temple ironed out her own awkwardness and her career prospered. In the 1990s, as she grew famous, she was increasingly invited to give talks initially about her experience as a professional who had overcome autism, later as an expert in animal behavior. In giving these talks, she imagined that they had it going quite well. They were full of information, appropriate slides to illustrate her ideas. But after a few such lectures, she had handed the evaluations from the audition. She handed the evaluations from the audition, and what she was reading was shocking. People complained that she made no eye contact, read her talk mechanically about her notes. She did not engage the audience to the point of rudeness. The audience had the impression that she was simply repeating the same talk over and over with the same slides, that she was a machine. Strangely enough, none of this bothered Temple. In fact, the idea of these evaluations excited her. They gave her a clear and realistic picture as herself as others saw her, and this is all that she ever needed for self correction. She pursued this process with great zeal, determined to transform herself into a skilled lecturer. As enough evaluations came, she pored over them, looking for patterns, criticisms that made sense. Working from the feedback, she taught herself to mix in antidotes, even jokes, and not to make her slides not so logical and tight. She swore in length for talks, trying herself to talk about speaking without notes, and made sure to take as many questions from the audience as possible. For those who had seen her initial efforts, she had attended lectures years later. It was hard to believe that she was the same person. She was not intending an engaging speaker. Hold on. One who could hold the attention of an audience better than most. They could not imagine how this had come about, which made her transformation seem all more miraculous. That was good reads today. So, what I read today was see yourself with others, like see myself from other point of views type, and I like that one a lot. So, we read a verse from this. Read about like two of these. Tomorrow we got 20 more minutes of this. Tomorrow, I'll see you tomorrow. Stream tomorrow too. I'll see y'all boys.